House of Árpád, Hungary's first dynasty. Part 1, 1000 to 1031. The House of Árpád was Hungary's first royal dynasty. It began with the crowning of King Stephen, István, about 1000 Common Era, and ended with the death of King Andrew III, the Venetian, in 1301. 301 years. In this video we will look at the first 131 years, the first 13 kings. A second video, out soon, will complete the dynasty. But you may be asking why the House of Árpád? Why not the House of István? A couple of reasons. First, Árpád was semi-legendary. He was purported to be the head chieftain of the Magyar tribes when they arrived in the Carpathian Basin in the 9th century. He was also said to be the son of Almos, who was conceived in a dream of the toro bird. Stephen, as his descendant, is so touched by the felső világ, his semi-divine. We do have corroborating evidence of Stephen's father and grandfather from third parties. So Stephen was in a line of tribal leaders. For the sake of simplicity, let's say he was Árpád's great-great-grandson. Stephen starts the House of Árpád because he was the first Hungarian leader to be accepted as king by other European countries. His coronation was supported by both the Pope and the Emperor, due in no small part by Stephen vowing to make Hungary a Christian country, no matter what it took. I've made a separate video on King St. Stephen, as he's a very complex and well-documented character. Another reason why it's not the House of Stephen is that Stephen had no direct heirs at the time of his death. Only one son, Emina, survived to adulthood, and he not by much. So when Stephen died, there was a problem. During his reign, Stephen had many of his relatives who might have been a threat to the throne killed, exiled, and or mutilated. So initially the monarchy went to his sister's son, Peter. He was unpopular with the nobles, who staged a coup d'etat and put the ex-Palatine Samuel, who was Peter's aunt's husband, on the throne. Samuel was then attacked by the Germans, who restored Peter, who agreed for Hungary to become an imperial fief, that is, a vassal, subservient to the Holy Roman Emperor. But Peter was no more popular the second time around, and an uprising of Hungarian pagans put Andrew I on the throne after a violent revolt. Andrew, or András in Hungarian, was the son of Stephen's cousin Vazul, who Stephen had blinded so he would be no threat to the throne of Hungary. The excuse being that he was a pagan. Stephen's definition of pagan and Christian was quite interesting. Evidence suggests that his cousin was in fact a Christian, but Eastern Orthodox, not Western. And just a side note, Hungary did not become a Christian country in the year 1000 because the majority of Hungarians were Christian, but rather that Stephen declared it so and enforced it brutally. For hundreds of years there were still Hungarians following the old pagan rites. Anyway, now we're back on the patrilineal line of Árpád's descendants. Andrew I, Andrew the White, Andrew the Catholic, Fehér András. After being made king, Andrew turned on his pagan supporters and proclaimed that they must return to the true faith of Christ on pain of death. He also persuaded his brother Bela to return from Poland and granted him 1/3 of the kingdom, the eastern and northern parts of it, with the title of Duke. The two brothers' good relationship, however, deteriorated after King Andrew decided his son Solomon should succeed him. Under Hungarian tradition, a younger brother should succeed the throne before the child of the king, but Andrew planned to murder his brother if he did not recognize his son Solomon. Bela, smartly, agreed and then fled back to Poland. The succession was then fought between the Polish troops under Bela and the Bavarian, Bohemian and Saxon troops under the Dowager Empress Agnes of the Holy Roman Empire. In the decisive battle, Andrew was injured, lost the battle, and died. So now we come to Bela. Bela the champion. I've seen it Bela the boxer, but that doesn't really make sense. Bainok is a champion or a fighter. Or Bela the wizened. A wizened is actually a buffalo. So Berlin, Bela. So once Bela successfully defeated the Germans, that is the Holy Roman Empire, he restored Hungary's independence. But just 3 years after ascending the throne, an assembly of the German princes decided to launch a military expedition against Hungary to make young Solomon, Andrew, his brother's son, king. Following Bela's death, his 3 sons, Géza, Laszlo and Lampert, sought refuge in Poland, and Solomon became king. I'm going to say Solomon because it's a word I'm used to. The Hungarian is actually Solomon. Solomon was just 10 years old when he ascended the throne, and 21 when he was defeated. So I was sort of wondering about the depiction of him. He died at 34. When he became king, he married Judith, sister of Henry IV, the Holy Roman Emperor. Judith, who was 16 at the time, along with Solomon's mother Anastasia, became his 2 principal advisors. In the following year, he reached an agreement with his cousins, Géza, Laszlo and Lampert, who acknowledged Solomon's rule, and in exchange each received 1/3 of the kingdom as a separate duchy. In the years to follow, Solomon and his cousins jointly fought against the Czechs, the Cumans and other enemies of the kingdom, but eventually Géza rebelled against him. Solomon was defeated in a battle in 1074. But he only officially abdicated in 1081. For 7 years, Solomon was only the king of a small part of the northwest, Moshon and nearby Pressburg, which is in Slovakia. Other parts of the kingdom accepted the rule of Géza. Solomon lived for another 6 years after he abdicated in battle in an uprising against his cousins. Géza I. Géza only ruled for 3 years before his death. Near the end, he considered renouncing the throne to Solomon, but he died before this happened. Now, there's an interesting legend that he and his brother Laszlo saw a stag with many candles burning on his horns. They said it was a sign from God, and they built a church dedicated to the Holy Virgin in Vazul. And it's an interesting contrast between this and the appearance of the totemic female Csodasávos, which led the Hungarians to the west. I've covered this in another video about myths about origins. So next up, we have Ladislaus. I think that's how you say it in English. Again, it's an unusual word. I'll stick with the Hungarian, which is Laszlo. Now, it's Laszlo, not Laszlo. So the S there is a single S sound. So when Géza died, Géza's son, Kalman and Olmos were minors. So his supporters proclaimed his brother, Laszlo, as king. It was Laszlo I that canonized the first Hungarian saints, and there are a lot, sounds like another video coming up, including King Stephen and his son, Imre. This was a political act showing his commitment to preserving and strengthening the Christian state. 100 years later, he in turn was canonized, and the legends depict him as a pious knight king, the incarnation of the late medieval Hungarian ideal of chivalry. But under his rule, he introduced very severe legislation, punishing those who violated property rights with death or mutilation, even for stealing a chicken. And beyond its borders, he occupied all of Croatia, and this was the beginning of a pattern which lasted over 800 years until 1918. Koloman the Learned, Könyves Kálmán, King of Hungary, Croatia and Dalmatia. Laszlo prepared Koloman, who was half blind and a humpback, for a church career, and Koloman was eventually appointed as Bishop of Eger, or maybe Várad. The dying King Laszlo preferred Almost Koloman for his heir, but when he died, Kálmán became King of Hungary at the age of 27. there was a slight delay in his coronation as he had to be released from his clerical vows. Soon after being crowned King of Hungary, Koloman also became King of Croatia, and soon after that he added Slavonia and Dalmatia. This was also the time of the First Crusade. For decades, Hungary had been able to supply a significant number of Western European pilgrims with food during their journey to the Holy Land. But the wave after wave of tens of thousands of crusaders across the country was more than could be coped with. What's more, these Christian soldiers pillaged, burnt public granaries and raped. Koloman seized his brother Almos's duchy and had him and his son Bela blinded. He also gave orders that the infant Bela should be castrated. If the soldier had not disobeyed, the House of Árpád would have ended with Koloman's son Stephen. But on the positive side, under Koloman, literary activity revived, although most of this was ecclesiastical. He softened Laszlo's harsh punishments for minor offences, and he made laws against witch trials. As he said, there was no such thing as a witch. However, he did hit the Hungarian shamans, the Talosok, hard. It's likely that Koloman died of encephalitis caused by an ear infection. Stephen II, Második István. In contrast to his father's history, Stephen's succession was peaceful. The childless Stephen wanted the son of his sister Sophia, Saul, to reign after his death, but that was not to be. Béla the Blind, Vok Béla, Béla II, Második Béla. Stephen's nephew Saul died before Stephen, but by the time Stephen died, his uncle Almos has also died in exile. The next heir could have been Boris. He was the son of Koloman's Ukrainian second wife, but despite Boris being supported by Poland, his paternity was in doubt, and eventually the throne fell to Stephen's cousin Bela, he who had been blinded by Koloman. Bela ruled with a Serbian wife, Helena. On his behalf, Queen Helena ordered the slaughter of all 68 noblemen who were accused of suggesting the blinding of her husband to King Koloman. Now, this has given me an idea for another video, the wives of the Árpád kings. In his 10-year rule, Bela added Bosnia to the Kingdom of Hungary. Sadly, in the last years of his life, Bela became a drunkard who was easily manipulated. Géza II, Második Géza, by the grace of God, King of Hungary, Dalmatia, Croatia and Rama. Géza was only 11 when his father Bela died. Boris the Pretender came out of the woodwork again, with the help of German mercenaries, leading to Géza attacking the Holy Roman Empire. This was the flavour of the time. There were crusaders again marching through Hungary. Hungary was involved in a dozen battles in Géza's 10 years as king, most outside the borders of Hungary. There was also conflict with his brothers who fled to Constantinople. During his reign, Hungary was settled by the Saxons, along with the Western European knights and Muslim warriors whom Géza had recruited. At the end, King Géza reigned together with his son, Duke Stephen, suggesting that he had officially nominated the child Stephen as his heir. Now this is where it gets messy. Második László, King of Hungary, Croatia, or was he just the Duke of Bosnia? Although indications were that Géza's son Stephen should succeed him, the Byzantine Emperor Manuel intervened, saying that it's a law among Hungarians that the crown passes always to the survivors of brothers. László was crowned king in July 1162. He died 6 months later. Stephen IV, Második István, King of Hungary and Croatia. László's brother Stephen was crowned 13 days later. Stephen called himself Stephen III, but history records him as Stephen IV. His nephew, Stephen, with Emperor Frederick I's approval, mustered an army of German mercenaries and discontented Hungarian lords, and captured and exiled his uncle Stephen IV. So, like his brother, Stephen was a 6-month king. The exiled Stephen sought help from both the Byzantine Empire and the Holy Roman Empire to regain his crown, but neither would help. Stephen was poisoned 2 years later by his own people. Stephen III, Harmadik István. Géza's son Stephen was crowned a month after his father died, by which time, as we just heard, so were his uncles. Stephen warred against the Byzantine Empire. During this time, Hungary lost central Dalmatia, Bosnia and Cimmerian to the Byzantine Empire. Later, he settled Knights Templar in Hungary and Walloon settlers in Székesfehérvár, who were given special privileges, for example, exemption of customs duties. When Stephen died at just 25 years old, it was rumoured that he too was poisoned. So that's the first instalment. In the next video we'll start with Stephen's younger brother Bela, who was sent to Constantinople after Stephen lost the war against the Byzantine Empire. Now please remember, this is a very brief overview. No, I have not covered every event, fact or person connected. Feel free to add your own discoveries in the comments, or use this as a springboard for your own reading. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it informative. If so, please leave a like or comment and consider subscribing.